All right, I want to start today by covering a concept that I obviously didn't cover very well because every single one of you got it wrong in lab 2. So that's my fault when that many of you get it wrong, obviously. Would have sworn it was in my notes, but I was just trying to find it before we started here and I can't find it in my notes. So either I talked about it in last year's recording, which I listened to, or it's buried in the book, or I don't know where it is, but we didn't discuss it. So I'm going to cover it now so that you know what mistake you made and hopefully won't make it again. I do know that we discussed this in Programming Logic Intermediate, but that was a long time ago, so that doesn't count. Here's a statement. If you put a semicolon on it, make it real. What does that do? Creates a pointer called lone1. Okay, so let's add the pointer component to this here, maybe. So there we go, we got a pointer. Okay. So whenever you declare an object of type class, of any type of class, you get a pointer. Now, to be a little more accurate here, this creates a pointer, and when it finally does point to something, it must point to an object of type lone. You can't define this pointer and then later on instantiate a new calendar and attach it to that. A little bit later, we could create a command that says lone1 equals a new lone parentheses. That instantiates the lone using the default constructor unless you've defined one in your class that defines what happens when you send it no parameters. By the way, that was another very common mistake. A lot of you put like real data in your constructors, like 7 years, $25,000 loan, 5.5% interest rate in the constructor, in that constructor, so that every time the user says, give me a new loan, they automatically get those numbers. Not a good plan. Today's date, okay, that's not a bad idea. But remember the constructors we created in Programming Logic Intermediate. They all just initialize the numbers to 0, maybe the strings to the empty string if there is such a thing. But you can't, the user program cannot assume that there's a 5 or would not expect there to be a 5.5% interest, a $25,000 initial loan amount, 7-year period. They wouldn't expect that. If you instantiate using this kind of a constructor, you expect it to give it some default values, but close to 0 or empty or something like that. So now that I've done that, this happens. It instantiates it, and now we have lone1 here, and I don't know if I can type in there. Cool, I can. So this is now lone1. That's going to be confusing. Let's say that this loan, just so we have something to reference, has a $25,000 with our balance. So once again, this creates a pointer to a loan initially. It's just a pointer pointing to a bunch of nothing to start with. And then when you instantiate it, then it gets some values. So if I were going to, in order to get the 25,000 in here, we'd probably do something like this. Lone1 dot set balance, or what did we call it? The amount, good enough, to 25,000. There. So far, so good. What does this do? Creates a pointer to an object that is a loan. What does it point to? Nothing. Here's where your mistake comes in. I hate these little anchor guys. I just can't. There we go. Most of you combined that line, said lone2 equals lone1. Some of you even said it instantiated it first and said lone2 equals a new loan, and then said lone2 equals lone1. Tell me one more time, what's lone one, John? A pointer. It's not an object. It's not an object. It's a pointer. And so when you say set lone2, the pointer, equal to lone1, the pointer, it goes, sure. Which I hope is not what you expected it to do, because if that's what you expected it to do, then you're even more wrong. Now they both point to the same place, so when I say something like this, what does that do? It changes the balance of whatever lone2 is pointing to, which happens to be this guy, to 10,000. And it has a side effect that I'm sure you didn't expect of changing the original loan amount. That happens for all classes except, and we're going to test this in a little while, except for, I think, the wrapper classes. The ones that do the capital D double, the capital I integer. I think when you say integer 1 equals integer 2, it actually copies the value and not just the pointer. We'll test that. Same thing with double, and I think strings even work that way. But we're going to test those here in just a little while to make sure. But for every other object type, like calendars, when you say lone2 equals lone1, calendar2 equals calendar1, it makes the pointers point to the same memory location. It does not do what every other type, the primitive types do, which is copy the value from one into this one. It doesn't do that. Even if you did this, okay, let's take this back in time here. Initially, we got a pointer. Now this says, make me a new loan. Oh, okay. Paste it in here, and it's kind of a skinny one, but we'll make it bigger. What? There. That's what this command said. Make me a new box. Okay. Then make lone1, the pointer, point to lone2. Okay. What happened to this box? Lost in space. In the IT technical terms, it is gone to the big bit bucket in the sky. The garbage collection will clean it up after a while and figure out nobody's pointing to it anymore. And it is lost. If you put stuff in there, gone. So how do I really do it then? And I thought this was in my notes and I was going to make you look it up. So it's not. So I guess we're going to have to go look it up. And I want to look for the calendar class. Who snuck in here? Harold? Anybody else sneak in here? Aaron? Okay. Let's make sure I don't lose that stuff. There's way too many windows going here. Let's do a search for Android calendar clone. Cloner. Nice name. If you want to make a copy of an object, I don't think that's what I want. Let's try that one. These are apps that I'm running into, unfortunately. Okay. Scroll, 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 scroll. Bunch of things we can do. Here's a summary. Those are all the different styles for calendars. And there is the clone. Give it an object and you clone it. So what you would have to do, and we'll test this before we're done, is instead of this, you would have to say lone1. I think I need a little help here.
Clone 2 equals clone 1 clone?
Maybe. This returns an object, so yes, that would be my guess. So when you read my evaluation sheets, it said you didn't clone it. That's right. You did this stuff. And many of your programs worked, and they give you the right answer. But what your program is doing, what you said is the loan date equals today or whatever day you picked. And then later on you said, many of you said loan date plus 7 years. Don't change the original value that was put. Don't let the class change the original value. That's poor style. If the user program said, I want the loan date to be September 28th, why would your class change that to 7 years in advance? Well, because I need to know when it's going to be paid off. Well, don't change the original, make a new variable. Clone the original, add 7 years to the clone, and send that back. Questions? Okay. I'll leave that handy just in case. It's a lovely picture, and let's go experiment with stuff and see if I can test all this. So here I am in my bowling program. Does my bowling program have a date? I don't think I put it in there because I was hoping that you would go out and experiment with it. So I'm going to go to my bowling class first, and oh, there's the calendar. Okay, and all of this seems to be working. And if I wanted to calculate the next bowling date, do I want to do that? Sure. What the heck? Doing you a favor. Public. What am I going to return here? A couple of you changed this and said, I'm going to return a date.
You return a calendar.
You should return a calendar because that's what you started with. And if your bowling date is a calendar, then your next bowling date ought to be a calendar. Don't start mixing types. I know the reason you did it is because later on you want to format that. And you can't format a calendar, you have to format a date. But don't change the objects returned by the class. Change your code in the main program to allow you to format it appropriately. So this should be a calendar. And I'm going to call this my next bowling date. Nothing goes in. And the first thing I want to do is create a clone. It's going to be its own calendar. Calendar. And I can call it clone or temp or whatever you want. And Reen suggests that maybe we should do this, where we take the bowling date and clone it. I get an error. But remember when I was looking at the documentation, it said that clone returns an object. An object? Why isn't this smart enough to send me a calendar? Here's some new terminology for you. This is called polymorphism. There's a nice word, huh? What does morph mean? To change, right? Poly means many, so this is many. What polymorphism allows you to do is have a clone method in all kinds of classes. Wouldn't I want to clone an array list maybe? A vector? I can clone all kinds of stuff, and they all have the same name. They're all called clone, 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 clone. But they all obviously behave differently. So what polymorphism allows you to do is have methods that have the same name in different types of objects. They have the same concept, because cloning an array list is the same concept. Give me the entire contents, a clone of it. And they both have the same name. Instead of saying clone a calendar, we just say clone. And this clone method is very generic. In order for it to be used the same in every different type of object, it has to be very generic, so its return type is object. So I think to fix this, we simply do this. And then I want to say temp.add calendar.year 5. That was another thing I thought was interesting. I know I had Sam and Andy hitting themselves in the head because they multiplied this by 12 to figure out how many months it was, and they made this months. Well, geez, you already have the years. The period of loans is in years. Why convert it to months and just use the years? Should work. So this adds 5 years to my bowling date. No, I don't think that's what I want. I'm going to, do I have weeks available here? Day of the week, no weeks, so I can't add 2 weeks, so I'm going to have to add 14 days, and that was date, if I remember right. And then return the temp. So it's not that much harder than using the temp equals bowling date. But every language I know, this is a rule. When you say pointer 1 equals pointer 2, they both point to the same place. That's not what you want. Most languages have some kind of a clone feature. And you might, in your programs or in your class, what if I wanted to clone a bowling series? Could I do that? Yes, you could write your own clone routine. So that you could say, make a copy of this one, because I bowled exactly the same thing 2 weeks in a row, except the date. Make a copy, change the date, no. I could do that. You can write your own clone routines, your own definition of that polymorphic clone method. Questions? Okay, I'm going to go to my main activity. And here's my test bowling. Let's do a Volcker test here or something. Let's call this a clone test. And I'll put it here so I can see it. I can always get rid of it later. I need this and this. Okay, so there's Reen bowling, and with that constructor, I must be using the current date because I didn't tell it what date, or either that I didn't build a constructor. Let's check the constructor real quick here.
I think you left the dates out.
I think they left the dates out because I wanted you to figure them out. Yeah. Okay, so I instantiated with this, and we didn't instantiate the calendar. Ugh. Okay, so let's do the calendar instantiation. I think all of you figured this out. Bowling date. Equals get instance calendar.get instance. What genius came up with that one? I have no idea. Why can't I just do a new calendar? Because that's not the way it's written. For some reason, they want to do that. There must be more behind it that they didn't want to put into a regular one. Now, when I do this, a get instance of a calendar, it automatically sets it to today's date. Now that I've messed up my class, I mess up my other example, that's all right. So I just added the date to both of my constructors. Take a breath here while the rest of you catch up. And for most of you, that should make sense because you all had a constructor that did that same thing. Of course, you didn't build it for you, right? You did that right-click, generate, and it generated a constructor with all 4, in this case 5 parameters. And you went, cool, I'm done. Didn't have to do it manually. So if you don't send me anything, I'm going to give you today's date for bowling. If you do send stuff in, you got to send all 5 pieces now. I've modified it. So that means I need to change it here. And what do I send in here? Calendar. Which calendar? Well, we could cheat and say calendar.getInstance. What does that do? Creates a poof, a new calendar, sends it to the routine down below that links it into my or to my bowling. If you want today's date, that's acceptable.
Show us how not to use today's date.
How not to use today's date? I'd have to look it up. One of you figured it out at least.
I couldn't figure it out using the calendar.
Wasn't there a set where you put the year, month, and day in calendar?
They had you can do this separately, like set year, set month, set day.
That would probably work, but I would have sworn there was another one. Here's the calendar class. Equals, no, clone compared to equals get. And if you get, you need to start learning how to read this stuff slowly. Right? So far I'm handing you all this stuff because I go look this stuff up. When you see stuff in my notes that said research it, find the name of the class in the Android developer, and then it just tells you all the different things that it can do. I think there's a set. Compute, protected methods, toString, set time zone, set time with a date.
I use set time, and I'm pretty sure I use the date.
I was sworn I saw somebody type it. There it is. Set. Year, month, day.
You gotta do that one.
0 and 0.
You put in at least 0 and 0 or try leaving them blank and see if it works. So, okay. But in order to use set, I have to have an instantiation. All right, so I can't use my little shortcut, so let's try that. So let's use reens here, and let's do this one. Okay, so now I'm using that one. So for my reen series, dot set the bowler name to reen. Set the game to 100. Now I want to set the date. So I first have to instantiate one.
You gotta make game 2 and 3 also.
Thank you. I wonder if there's a version locale. Callbacks. I always wonder if there's a version you just put the numbers in after the calendar. That would be nice, but I didn't see that one. I'm still looking for shortcuts. I haven't found it yet. All right, so then the date dot set. And here's a year, month, day. So that's another way to look it up, by the way. But what if you don't know the name of the method? If you don't know the name of the method, then you kind of have to go to the documentation and say, what's the name of the method? Or you can type nothing in here, and now you can scroll for a half an hour, right? And that's not bad. But here's our set, and I see a year, month, day. So Beauteous 2015 09 28. Doesn't like deleting 0 on my 9.
No, I think that 9 ends up being October.
Is it? Okay, let's find out, right?
I think it starts at 0 in January.
Okay. So the month is 0 based. That's annoying.
That's what.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Because there's also, there's like a calendar dot March or calendar dot September. You can
Right.
do-
And they are all
that
0
deals
based.
it.
Okay.
If you put in the number, I have some weird stuff.
So let's do the TV dot set text to the date. And let's try this. Set text needs to have a string. When I send it to date, that's not a string. I probably could have done a 2-string, but this is my shortcut. Give me an empty string and concatenate this. Now that we're concatenating, the powerful, all-powerful concatenation operator says, hey, the date. Are you a string? No. Do you get a 2-string? Yeah, give that to me. Yeah, where'd my simulator go? There it is. That's ugly. Says month is 9.
You gotta format the date.
Yeah, but I don't want to go that far. That gives me a calendar, and you can see what the 2-string class gives me, a bunch of stuff, right? But we can also do a get time. That converts it to a date, which is a little more readable even if you don't format it. And this is what you have to do for those of you who couldn't get it to work, to use the date format that's in my notes, the extended notes. Wednesday, October 29th, or 28th. October, I said 9. 0 based. What genius came up with that one? I don't have a clue, except I'm guessing they have a bunch of arrays in there that figures out how many days are in each month. So you go to index 0, 1, 9. What's the name of the month? What's the short name of the month? All that kind of stuff. So that's probably why it's 0 based. The point is, you got to know it's 0 based. So this is the way I cheat. There. 0 based. Now it's 8. But I really wanted the 9. I'm subtracting 1 just to make a stupid program happy. Did I click it hard enough? Yep. Okay, September 28th. Finally got what I want. So there's the answer to that question. Now, the next thing I want to do is determine the next bowling date and display it. So I'm going to do a TV set text, and I want to get the Reen series dot next bowling date. And I think I can do a get time on that now. Now, why do I want both? To see that the original one hasn't changed. Because if I did this right, the original one should not change. When you do yours, you might, just as a test, display, after you display the loan payoff date, display the original date to see if it's still the same. Because all of your programs, when I look at the output, they look great. Here's the original loan date today, whatever it was. And then at the end, 20 years in the future, perfect. But in the process, your program has changed the original value that the user program, your business class, changed the original value of the loan date. And you shouldn't do that. So I should see that plus 2 weeks now, out in October someplace. Oops. Well, the good news is, yes, I should. But the good news is October 12th sounds right. But what I can't see is the original still there. And actually the best way to do this is to flip them. Because I want to change it, because this process, when you call that method, that's when you actually change it. That's when you all actually changed it. Right. So the best way is to append this and put my \n on here and move it up. By the way, in many of my evaluations, I said check line number 17. Where's the line numbers? For some reason in Android, it doesn't leave them on. All you gotta do is right click over here somewhere. In this space, where'd it go?
Great.
There it is. Show the line numbers. As long as you haven't moved stuff around, you should have the same line numbers that I'm referring to in code or in my evaluation sheets. Okay, so let's test that one more time. Now we should see both the October 12th and hopefully my original date is still the same. Wait a minute. I never put it into the bowling, did I? Why would this change? It wouldn't. So why did that one work? Because I instantiated today's date in the open class. So what I needed to do here, what I forgot to do, was the Reen series dot set the bowling date to the date. And this is the right way to test it. Okay, one more time. There's the 12th, the original is still there. Right, and an even better test is not to use today's date because of what it worked before, because I was using today's date, but that was the default. So let's change this to the 15th and do one more test to make sure everything still works. Looks good. Now, a little while ago, I was mentioning, what if I use strings? Now that should be an uh-oh, right? Strings a class. So this says that name1 and name2 now both point to the same place. So if I change name2, what's in name1? I think with strings, this is legal, but I don't know. Yeah, I decided to do it just because I don't need to see the dates anymore. What do I expect? I'm not sure. Either Volker or Volker Gull, one of the two, and I'm curious to see. I expect Volker. That when I assign strings to each other,
If you don't use the superclass, then it'll screw up.
String is a class. There is no primitive here.
There's no primitive on string, right?
How come? Because whoever wrote the string class overrode the equal sign. It is possible to take the operators, the equal sign, and say, when somebody says equal, this is really what they mean, clone. They did it for us. Why don't they do that in all the other classes? Because there are many times when you want two things pointing to the same place. Imagine having an entire array list full of student records, and you want to walk through them. So you say current student equals student number 4, and they both point to the same place. The array list still points to it, and your program still points to it. If we did an equal, it would make a copy of it, and that probably wouldn't be what you want to do. So there are many times when we do want two variables pointing to the same memory location. That's why. In strings, why would I want that? Pretty rare. I'm guessing the same thing is going to happen. I'm just going to do a double here and check it. I'm guessing the same thing is going to happen with doubles. So I want to make sure that my N1 is still 100. Because technically this is a class. Right? Remember we called it a wrapper class a couple weeks ago. It's a class. And so given my lovely pictures of all the arrows pointing all over the place, N1 should be 200, but it's not. Only for those numeric wrapper classes and the string class does the equal assignment work the way you expect, the way you're used to. Yeah.
The buffer class has 2 for strings.
The buffer class?
String buffer class?
Yes. Oh, so that class still creates a string?
They point to the same place rather than making.
Oh, okay. But it's not the string class, right? Which
Right.
is kind of what I said. The strings, integers, doubles, probably floats and bytes and shorts, those all do copy when you do equal sign. Everybody else moves the pointer. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind. It's a very, very, very important concept. Let's pause there, take our 10-minute break early. I want to talk about exception handling, and then we'll be done. But at the beginning of the next recording, I am also going to be talking about the assignments. Remember, next week, I do not plan to be here. If something goes wrong, I bust a leg, my car goes crazy, and I can't go on my vacation, I might give you a quick enough email, but probably not. Even if my car breaks, I might still take next Monday off. So at the beginning of the next recording, I'll talk about all the work I have for you to do, and then we'll finish up the lecture and hopefully get you, for those of you who want, out of here in time to see most of the game.